till morning is nigh.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I have a bit of post-Christmas humor for you this morning. It's called the month after Christmas. So we're thinking ahead here, right? So 'twas the month after Christmas, and all through the house nothing would fit me, not even a blouse. The cookies I'd nibbled, the fudge I did taste, all the holiday parties had gone to my waist. When I got on the scales, there arose such a number. When I walked to the store, well, more like a lumber, I remembered the marvelous meals I'd prepared, the gravies and sauces, the beef nicely rare, the pies and the cakes, the bread and the cheese, and the way I'd never said, no thank you, please. As I dressed myself in my husband's old shirt and prepared once again to do battle with dirt, I said to myself, as I only can, you can't spend the winter disguised as a man. So away with the last of the sour cream dip, get rid of the fruitcake, every cracker and chip, and every taste bit of food that I like must be banished till all of the additional ounces have vanished. I won't have a cookie, not even a lick. I'll want only to chew on a long celery stick. I won't have hot biscuits or cornbread or pie. I'll munch on a carrot and quietly cry. I'm hungry, I'm lonesome, and life is a bore. But isn't that what January is for? Unable to giggle, no longer a riot. Happy New Year to all, and to all a good diet. I thought it'd be valuable to say that ahead of time rather than so that we could be prepared for the season, right? Well, we're moving into a part of what really has become a whole season, hasn't it? It's not just a particular day, but it's a season. And we've been looking at what it means in terms of the story of Christmas and the metaphysics of the story of Christmas. And we've been looking primarily in Luke. And I'm going to read to you today from Luke, starting in chapter 2. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all of the world should be enrolled. And this was the first enrollment when Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all went to be enrolled, each into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, and to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, and to be enrolled with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to be delivered. And when she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. And so last week we kind of talked about a metaphysical understanding that everything that goes on in our life and world ultimately in some way has some reflection that's going on in our own inner state, in our own consciousness. And that these stories are really about the evolution of each of our souls. And that we're each growing into a more, how shall I put it, a more whole experience and expression of who and what we are created to be. We start in Genesis where it says we are created in the image and after the likeness of God. And so we're created in the image and after the likeness of that which is divine. And yet we're also created as human beings. And we sometimes think that those two things are not the same and they're separate. And what we're really about is understanding that even through our human nature and through our human experiences, there's a divine nature that's at work. And to me, it's really one of the essences of what the story of Christmas and the story of the birth of Jesus really speaks to about. And I kind of thought about how each and every one of us in some way is reflective of some aspect of our own psyche. And if you look around, I said this last week, if you look around at the people that are sitting close to you, sitting next to you, the people that are in your lives, they actually represent something within you or they wouldn't be there. And they show up in ways that sometimes remind us of aspects of ourselves, and sometimes they remind us of aspects of ourselves that we just adore, and sometimes they remind us of aspects of ourselves that we would just as soon do without. Isn't that true? But they all reflect and represent something that's going on in our energy and our consciousness. And so part of what the story here is to help bring us into another awareness of our own unique divine nature. One of the things that when we look at from this story metaphysically, you might ask the question, well, when does this divine nature awaken within our own individual consciousness? And this is kind of what the story is trying to help us understand. There's a process that's going on in all of us, and how we become more aware and conscious in our divine nature. And last week we talked about the idea and the understanding of Caesar Augustus representing our own unique our own ego consciousness. And the ego consciousness is really, it's even more than just the ego, but it is a willfulness. It's a willful ego, or you might say a selfish kind of idea. And there was a proclamation going out to be enrolled, which is really about controlling. Nobody here, of course, I realize has any kind of control issues, but maybe I'm talking about me personally. But no, the reality is, if you're in a human body, you probably have some aspect of a control issue, because we all want things to be the way we think they're supposed to be, right? And so we are trying to evolve from that kind of consciousness into a consciousness that is really open to higher awarenesses and higher possibilities of who and what we are, but also using our own unique creative abilities to create the kind of life and world that possibly can be in our lives. And so the birth of Jesus is really also an understanding that we are each and every one growing into an awareness of the connection between our human nature and our divine nature. I like the story because it really gives some wonderful archetypal awarenesses and images of that. See, the birth of Christ takes place in the individual soul when the soul awakens to a realization of the truth of life in a spiritual, and that we are spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We sometimes think that we're human beings and we have these spiritual experiences, and that's true also. But the essence of who we are is that we are uniquely divine. We are uniquely divine. And we're waking up to that, and this is kind of a process that we're going through to uncover those different aspects of our being that help us to shine more of that divine nature in our lives. Metaphysically, the statement of Mary laid the infant in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. This is kind of one of the things I want to talk a little bit about today. You see, our Christ nature, we all have that. We're all created in a very special and unique way. In fact, we are so disgustingly unique that we're exactly alike that way. And that's the beauty of who and what we are. That we are unique expressions of something that is even sometimes hard to put into words, because it is of a level of our energy and our consciousness that really is really before words. And when we're learning to tap into that, we have a lot of things that go on that tend to try and get in the way of that. Tend to control life. We tend to control things going on out in the world, and that's what the Caesar Augustus and Quirinius, easy for me to say, right? Quirinius really represents. And then there's also Joseph and Mary, and Joseph represents our more illumined awareness of our thoughts that are really more focused toward and open to our spiritual nature. And Mary represents the divine feminine, which is our heart and our emotions and our higher energy emotions and feelings. And so when we look at that, out of those things comes our divine nature. And I started thinking about and meditating on the metaphysical ideas, and was reading some of our metaphysical authors, of some of the interpretations that have been made. And the thing I want to share with you is that I'm sharing with you some metaphysical interpretations, but I'm not sharing them with you is that these absolutely represent and mean these things. What I'm trying to do is help develop within each and every one of us what's been called metaphysical thinking, so that we each can begin to look at our own consciousness in such a way that we're looking at and understanding life more from a metaphysical perspective. And so it's not, how many of you have ever read one of those dream books that says, well, if you dreamed about this, it means this, right? Well, those can be valuable as guides of what something might possibly mean. But if you take them as this absolute, then you're really probably going to wind up missing a lot of what that particular character or experience is for you personally, because we are unique, and because each and every one of us is unfolding in a unique way. And yet there are consistencies in our spiritual unfoldment as well. And so part of our understanding is to truly tune into what are the patterns that each of us go through, the processes that each of us go through, and how can we tune into what those are reflecting within our own nature. And so when I look at this idea, this understanding, the story really is that there was a decree that goes out, which is really kind of the world trying to say, okay, you're going to be this way, and you have to be this way, and you're going to show up this way, and this is what you have to do, and you're going to be enrolled, and we're going to keep track of you, and we're going to keep count on everything. And we kind of live in a world like that, don't we? And so one of the things that happens is that we sometimes get caught up in all of those things and think that's who we are. We begin to identify with all the things that are going on out here in the world. And so this story is really a journey from moving from an awareness of getting caught up in believing ourselves to be caught up in and identifying with all of the external aspects of our nature, to really recognizing more of the eternal, internal aspect of our nature. That we have within us a unique place, and place is not even a good word, a unique awareness, a unique consciousness that really is more of our unique potential and possibility. And so when we look at going to Jerusalem to be accounted, we wind up going actually to Bethlehem. Bethlehem really represents, it's the city of David. And the city of David, David represents divine love. And so we're moving into a place of divine love, and it's really in a place of divine love that our unique nature can become more, can flourish, can grow, can be born actually. And so when I think about, and I looked at and really reflected on this idea of going to Bethlehem, and Mary and Joseph show in Bethlehem. We have historically that they're showing up on a donkey, and this represents in many ways more of our physical nature. And so we're going to Bethlehem, and the idea, the understanding what's in the story is that there, you can see, you've seen, I'm sure, in all the Christmas plays, they're going knocking on all the doors of all the inns, and there's no room in the inn. There's no room in the inn. Well, metaphysically, the inn actually represents our everyday kind of thinking and consciousness. It's all of the things that are going on, and I got news for you. This stuff up here is really full. There's a lot going on up here. Have you noticed that? A lot of mind chatter. A lot of monkey mind, as I call it. And our divine nature is not born in that kind of place. You realize that? In fact, there's no room for our divine nature to be born when we're caught up in all of the mind chatter. When we're caught up in all of the thoughts and the what ifs and the if onlys and does that make sense? So metaphysically, this represents not being able to go into the inn, is that we're actually moving out of that place of being caught up in all the mind chatter. And so the N represents our conscious mind. And our conscious mind is that part of us that's always got this chatter going all the time, right? And so, metaphysically, Mary and Joseph, our thinking and our feeling, go to the stable, as we say. Now, interestingly enough, I was looking through the Bible, and I found nowhere where it says that they went to a stable. What I saw was that Jesus was born in a manger. Well, he wasn't actually born in a manger. He was born from Mary, but they placed him in a manger, right? But here's the thing. Manger is actually a wooden trough that is filled with hay for the purpose of feeding the animals. And so it's been supposed that it was in a barn. And the barn really metaphysically represents our subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind actually has all kinds of interesting thoughts and feelings and emotions that go on, and the animals in the barn represent all of these different thoughts and feelings and emotions that go on in us. And it's really metaphysically sound because the reality is we are really working toward really having our superconscious mind connect us with our divine mind. See, the superconscious mind is that part of us that is connected with the divine mind, and the Christ nature comes through our superconscious nature. It comes through the superconscious level of mind. But the superconscious actually comes to us from our unconscious. It comes through the unconscious mind. And so when we look at metaphysically going to the end and the Christ child being born, we're talking about the superconscious nature, the Christ nature coming through the superconscious mind and being placed in a manger, which really is in our subconscious mind. Make sense? Are you following this? No? Okay. Well, let me see. How can I put it a little differently? You and I are creative beings. We are created to create. And the way that we create, we can either create we are creating primarily through our subconscious level of mind. But the subconscious level of mind is pivotal. It can reflect the outer world, which is all the stuff going on in the end, or it can actually reflect our unique divine nature, which is the Christ. And so when we are looking at this story, we are actually looking at a journey that turns us from having us create our life based upon what's going on up here in the mind chatter to a place where we are in a place of honoring, you might say, the beginning awarenesses, the beginning awakening of our unique qualities. Now, one of the things that Charles Fillmore teaches and has taught us is that we each have these divine ideas that come through our superconscious level of mind. And these divine ideas, he says there's 12 of them. And those are reflected by the 12 tribes of Israel. They're also reflected by the 12 disciples. And each one of us has these unique divine qualities, and we are waking up to these unique divine qualities, and the birth of the Christ is a symbolic representation of us waking up to those. The manger is a place within our consciousness that's in our subconscious level of mind that, yes, has a lot of different ideas and understandings that are not necessarily what's going on in our conscious mind, but it is the place in which we are connecting with our superconscious mind, allowing that to reflect through our subconscious mind, and then be expressed out into the world. Does that make any sense? So, when we think about the manger, it really is a place of safety. It's really a place where we are connecting on a deeper level, and it's a place where we are placing our unique divine nature. And we do that, before we do that, we wrap our divine nature, this awakening possibility of our spiritual being, in swaddling clothes. Now, swaddling clothes are basically clothes that you use to wrap up a baby, right? Our young grandbaby, Colby, who we absolutely adore, as you can imagine, one of the things that we realize is that they, for many, many months after she was born, they wrapped her up in these little, what do they call those? I guess they're called swaddling clothes, but they're not called that anymore nowadays. But receiving blankets or whatever, and they wrap them really tight in those. And there's a reason for that. And one of the reasons is that it really helps them to feel secure. There's a place of connection and warmness that they feel. It's a place where, when a new baby is born, they really don't seem to have a lot of control over the arms and legs. Have you noticed that? Of course, I sometimes don't either, as you notice, but they don't have a lot of control over their arms and legs, and so they'll flail and they twitch and they don't feel secure in that place. And so if they're all over the place, and so they wrap them up so that they feel more secure. And so this is a place within us where we honor the understanding that these divine qualities are not always fully developed. I want to talk a little bit about the divine qualities. And so Charles Fillmore, and this is one of the things that our candlelighting service is based on. Charles Fillmore taught an amazing mystical work called The 12 Powers of Man, which is actually a generic term, which is humankind. It's 12 powers of humankind, men and women. And he felt that each one of us has these unique divine qualities, that they make up our unique divine nature. And they are in different unique expressions and ways and different levels that they're developed in different ways. And so there's faith, and there's strength, there's wisdom, there's order, there's love, there's power, there's imagination, there's will, there's understanding, there's zeal, there's elimination, and there's life. And each of us have those qualities within us, and they're developed in different ways. There are those who are very developed in the area of strength, but perhaps not quite as developed in the area of understanding. There are those that are very developed in the area of understanding, but maybe not quite as developed in the area of zeal and enthusiasm. And yet we all have these within us, and we all have the potential for developing these. And so this story really is about the awakening of those within us. And each one of us, we have to nurture, and we have to take care of. And they usually arise not so much from our necessarily thinking about them, but they arise from the subconscious mind through the superconscious mind. Our superconscious mind really has more connection with those different qualities. And so part of our work is, in meditation, to move back into a place of stillness, of quiet, of safety, so that we can allow those different qualities to rise up within us and to begin to grow safely and to be taken care of. There's more in this story that really is about how do we take care of that newborn babe. Because there are voices within us, and we'll get into that more next week, voices like Herod who say, man, we got to wipe all the babies out to take care of that. We got to make sure that that doesn't grow in us. And so there's an ego consciousness that feels threatened when we begin developing faith. There's an ego consciousness that says, no, you can't have faith in that. Because I can't see it. If you can't see it, it can't be real. You follow that? Any of that sound familiar? So this is an interesting metaphysical exercise that we can really take some time to reflect on. When you look at what goes on inside of you, where do you allow those unique divine natures to be safely nurtured? Where do you allow the qualities of faith to grow in you? And how do you do that? How do you allow yourself to grow stronger in your spiritual nature? How do you allow yourself to grow stronger in your connection with your unique possibilities? What is the strength that you truly depend on? Do you depend on the strength that the world says? Last week we talked about the importance of understanding the difference between power and force. And force really has to do with trying to force life, the world, experiences to be the way we think they're supposed to be. And power has to do with allowing something greater to unfold. And so when we look at this story, there's a place within each and every one of us. You can call it a stable if you want. It's our human nature. We have a human nature. We're all human. At least I assume that we all are. And if we're not human, we're human-like, right? But in every one of us, that human nature, there's something even more wonderful and magnificent that's beyond just the limitations that we hold of ourselves as human beings. I remember hearing a lesson some years ago by a Methodist minister, and one of the things that he said was, I hear this a lot of times that, we make a mistake and we say, well, I'm only human. But I'm going to suggest to you that even when we make mistakes, we're not only human, but we're also divine. And ultimately, even those mistakes are something that can help us to develop and grow on another level. Oftentimes, they're there to show us that we can choose differently, that we can see differently, we can make different decisions, we can develop different possibilities, we can develop different qualities, we can grow stronger, we can grow wiser, we can grow more understanding, sometimes when we're challenged to be understanding. Wouldn't you agree? And so when we go through the Christmas season and all the hustle and bustle and, let's remember that the hustle and bustle that goes on out here in the world is that part of us that's really just trying to keep things flowing and that there's a part of us that really can unfold that helps us to step more into that unique quality of faith, of understanding, of the qualities of strength, the qualities of divine order. We all have those, and when we see something out here that doesn't feel like it reflects that, then that's our lessons. That's our opportunities. That's our opportunities for that divine Christ child to be nurtured in the manger of our own human hearts. So that's our fun this week, probably for the rest of the Christmas season for sure. So I hope you'll take time to meditate and reflect on this idea of nurturing that unique divine quality that arises within you, especially the one that you have a tendency to want to push down, right? To honor that and to honor how it comes forth in a human sense, in a human way. And let's celebrate Christmas by honoring not only the divine within us, but by honoring how it does show up in our everyday life. And that's our lesson for the week. Let's move into our meditation time. So let's take a nice deep breath as we move into our meditation time. Just breathing in and out, and just allow yourself to take a moment to be open and to feel the childlike nature, the newborn nature of some of these unique divine qualities of faith and strength, of wisdom and love, of order and power, of imagination and will, of understanding, of zeal, of elimination, and of life itself. And just see each and every one as a newborn infant. And if there's one that you would like to experience more of, hold that in your heart and wrap it in those thoughts and feelings that nurture faith or that nurture strength. See yourself experiencing more understanding, perhaps, through compassion and care for even yourself and that little one, that child of the divine within you. And if there are little voices inside that feel perhaps judgmental that there's not enough or there's too much, or there are voices that say you can't or I can't, just notice those and bless them and come back to swaddling that unique quality of zeal, also known as enthusiasm. And let your enthusiasm be nurtured and honored, rather than pushing it down or hiding it away. Or just take the time now to honor and protect and nurture all of those unique qualities of spirit. And breathe into your heart space and feel those in your heart. And feel them being nurtured and growing there. Just sending the energies of love to that part of you. Your imagination. See your imagination growing and expanding and seeing even greater possibilities and looking beyond appearances and knowing that you have the ability to see things that are not there yet but are on their way. And feel the excitement of that. Just like Christmas Day, opening up presents. And the present that you are opening is the Christ child within you. And just experience the joy of an even greater possibility of the you that you are created to be. And to that part of you, just say, I love you. Merry Christmas. Take a nice deep breath now. Take another nice deep breath. Let your awareness be in this room, this time, this place. And give thanks for that awakening and expanding and growing of that beautiful child of God in the very essence of you. And so it is. Amen.